Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Grady. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Inland Wetlands Commission of Monroe. Today is October 10th. It is currently 7:08 p.m. The first order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next order of business is to introduce to you the members of the board, our commission here tonight. Starting all the way on the right is Commissioner Keith Romano. Next to him is Commissioner Clark Dingras. Right, yes. Next is Commissioner Ross Mastroraco. Next to him is Commissioner Jim Stewart, who is our treasurer, is a professional engineer and a licensed land surveyor. To my left is Donna Szynski, our Inland and Wetlands Commission and Land Use Coordinator. Next to her is Scott Schatzeline. Where are all your things? Licensed professional engineer, land use director, town engineer, and our Inland and Wetland agent. And that's it tonight, right? Before we start our regular agenda, I'm supposed to read to you our Inland Wetlands mission statement. The objective and purpose of the Inland Wetlands Commission is to provide for the overall protection and preservation of the inland wetlands and watercourses within the town of Monroe. In the normal course of our meetings, we will hear public hearings and other applications. The protocol for public hearings is to have an applicant make a representation or presentation to the commission, during which and after which the commission will be asking the applicant questions. The commission will then review town, staff, and other independent comments. The meeting will be opened up to the public for comment. I will ask that all comments be made to the chair or the commission. After any and all comments pro, in opposition, or of a general nature are made, the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond. It is not necessary that the applicant respond, but generally in their best interest to do so. There will be no further opportunity for questions unless new material is entered in as evidence or testimony during their response. Please keep any and all comments, pro and con, specific to inland wetlands related matters. Other applications that do not involve public hearings will follow a similar format, with the exception that there will be no public comments allowed. The meeting follows our published agenda, unless otherwise amended. It's up here in green if anybody wants one. Is there any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are.
Let me have.
Okay. Let's see. The first is the addition of 104 Elm Street, which is going to be added or reviewed under subdivision report recommendations. It's item 2. The second is 731 Main Street to be added under item 4, enforcement, notice of violation discussions. 71 Turkey Roost Road will be added under item 5, application hearing determinations. 19 Richards Drive and 55 Richards Drive will be added under item 10, permitted uses as of right for review. And 786 Main Street under item 10, item 10C, status updates. And I don't know if Scott, you have one?
And under 12, general discussion, another 9 Hattertown and 4 Easton will be added.
Okay, thank you very much. Now is a period of time reserved for public participation. This is anybody in public that would like to make a comment of a general nature as it relates to inland wetlands in the town of Monroe, but nothing that's on our agenda. Seeing none, we'll move forward. Subdivision report recommendations to P&Z Commission, as well as the first item in our regulated activities is IWC 2018-11, 104 Elm Street, Connecticut Houses LLC. Paul Duh, removal of stockpile material in regulated area and subdivision referral.
Good evening. Bill Carbone, Staff York and Associates.
Good evening, Mr. Carbone.
I'm a professional engineer, registered in the state of Connecticut, and representing Mr. Dew. This is, the site is 6.23 acres This is Elm Street along the bottom, and this is Purdy Hill Road coming in on the right side of the map. It is proposed to be a 3-lot subdivision. Currently, there is a single-family house located on the property, and we're proposing creating a lot here and a lot there. All the new houses will be on the front near Elm Street. The Far Mill River is in the back in this area, about 320 to 400 feet from Elm Street. All proposed development will be outside the 100-foot regulated area, shown here in red. There is a stockpile located in the back part of the property. I received Scott's comments yesterday at 3 o'clock, so I don't have written responses, but I would like to go through them item by item. The first was referred to the Aquarian letter that we received. Most of the letter is informative, and there's only one suggestion that changes the plans, and that is to back up the silt fence with hay bales. If a commission agrees to add those, and there is silt fence all along this area, and then another row along the back of the development. If the commission wants us to do that, we'll make that part of the final plans. Scott has questioned whether we need a environmental assessment of the property. All the development and disturbance is in this area. The wetlands line follows this in here. We are 120 to 130 feet from the wetlands, except for the stockpile. So we don't think that an environmental assessment is necessary. Our development is well away from that area. We received today a health report. I have copies which I will distribute out in a minute. Scott has said that we should file for a floodplain permit.
Can you just back up a little bit on the, just so you know, on the health department report? It wasn't real clear to me, because usually with a subdivision, we want the health department to make a statement that the lots that are being created are such that they can support a septic system. So I did talk to him today and clarified, and he did confirm that that is the case. So he's okay and is saying that he just needs more detail.
This is submitted this about a month ago, and we'll be distributing the letter. Item 4 was a concern the floodplain permit. We submitted a flood hazard permit application. When we brought it to Town Hall for submittal, they said that was a P&Z matter. Scott has come back later and clarified that. And apparently there is a new permit form which is dated a day after we submitted it. So that's hence the comment about updated. It was current at the time. Apparently the procedure will be that after this commission recommendation, let's call it an approval, so we're positive about it, then we come back with the floodplain permit. Is that?
No, you don't come back to this commission. The floodplain permit is through planning and zoning, but it's administrative. So you don't have to go anywhere.
Oh.
After you get the approval, you submit the application for floodplain permit, and it's processed. It's a relatively, there's no notice or anything like that. So
Right.
It's a very quick application.
Yeah, one page.
No, I mean, it's quick in time.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't take long.
Which we will do depending on the outcome of this hearing. The question and the main comment in here is this stockpile area. This pile was built or made somewhere between 1984 and 1991. The 1984 topo does not show this formation here, but we have maps from 1991 from Google Earth that does show it. So somewhere in that range, this was created. Just so the commission knows what I'm talking about. If I can get this. This is 1990. If you read that, that is the stockpile in 1990. There was supposed to be pictures attached to this, but
There's a second, there you go.
thank you. 1991 showing the thing. This is the stockpile. As you can see, it's been there for most likely 30 years. It's well established, dense. That is a close-up of what the material looks like. But it does not appear in the mapping used by FEMA to produce the flood study. So this is the river coming in through here, and that stockpile does not influence the river itself, but it does the floodplain area, and it has reduced the flood storage in the floodplain. The applicant will remove this pile with the commission's approval. Going on with Scott's comments, he questions the updating of the A1 map. The A1 map was started by the town, and the idea was to show the general area and particularly the drainage areas around it. So I don't think whether this is, ours is based on the 1984 topo, but I believe it currently shows the the drainage patterns in the area.
And Bill, what I was getting at with that, you kind of just addressed with your synopsis of the aerials and when the stockpile went in.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was going with that.
Got it.
So
Well,
you've kind of addressed that in your presentation.
Fine, so hopefully we've done that. The upland review area for the Farm Mill River is 100 feet. On the reverse side of what I just handed out is an excerpt from the wetlands regulations showing the Farm Mill River is 100. Mill River is 150, but we're in the Farm Mill. With that said, the reserve area for, how do I get back? Let's go back up to the plans. The reserve area for the existing house is outside the 100-foot regulated area. When we were doing this house, we placed a septic system in this area. We had originally taken the recharge galleries for this house, and they were located right here with that test pit. Upon further examination, we found this septic system for the adjacent house encroached on our property, but more importantly, it didn't have the proper setback area. So we moved it to this area, and there is no testing in that area. However, there are numerous test pits all the way around it. The soils in this area are very uniform. All of those test holes had a range of 79 to 85 inches deep. There was no ledge, no water, no modeling found in any of the test holes except one where they had water in 56 inches. So we feel that this is an adequate location, and as part of the conditions of approval, I would suggest asking for a test hole in this area, but I don't think it will affect the design of the project. If we remove the stockpile, we're calling for, I can't read that very well from here, but to be seeded with New England wet mix, because we are immediately adjacent to the wetlands and the river at this prescribed rate. In another portion of his comments, he said that something should be put in for this area. It's outside the stockpile, but is a mowed area. It's really what I think happened in there. They mowed this because it was filled with knotweed. And he knocked all the knotweed down, but it looks like a lawn. So if they want, we can replace this with a similar New England mix, but it would be the New England showy wildflower mix, which is suitable for an upland meadow, which this is most likely not a wet meadow, but a meadow that even as far as June of this year was still damp. There was questions about the erosion control measures that are needed, and where is the access if we are to remove this stockpile. There is an existing trail that goes down here. It was most likely the original trail that they used to create the stockpile. We propose using that, extending where it ends out to Elm Street, and we've called for an anti-tracking pad there to during the removal process. We have silt fence going all the way down. The direction of flow in general is in this direction, so we put silt fence all the way down and around the stockpile. Again, if we follow Aquarian suggestions, we could back that up with hay bales. There was the last comment was, although passive use is anticipated, we don't really particularly know why there will be any particular use of this area. The houses are up in here. There is a wooded area all through here separating them. But according to section 4.2B, outdoor recreation is permitted as of right. So I don't know what we would say to restrict passive use in this area. We don't anticipate it, but if somebody's walking through it, that's permitted. That's basically the presentation. As I say, the biggest item is the removal of the stockpile, which the applicant is with that. To remove it would be up to this commission.
How much material is there?
This is most likely 40 to 50 feet wide and 20 to 30 feet high.
Keep waiting. Grab my calculator.
A 40-foot circle is 30 feet.
How wide is it?
This is about 50 feet across here,
And 20 feet high?
20 to 30 feet high, yeah.
It's got trees growing in it right now, right? Yeah.
Yes. That's the picture of it.
What's in it? Like just dirt or?
As far as we know, I mean, we didn't do test pits in the thing, but Dave Bjorklund went out there and dug a small hole, and it just appeared,
Subsoil or?
it's not topsoil.
Subsoil?
Yeah. It's
My
not bank run
understanding-
gravel.
My understanding of it is it's when they dug out the second pond, that's the material that they took out when they built the second pond and the property which is now next door.
Which was owned by,
Originally.
they were all owned by the same person at that
Now,
time.
the issue on the town side is that as you may know, the town regulates activity in floodplains for FEMA. So the the fact that they, unfortunately, they put that pile there, they left that pile there at a time when the floodplain ordinance was adopted. Floodplain, FEMA put out the floodplain requirements in 1985. And from 1985 till now, it requires a permit to put something in a floodplain. I don't know, how long ago was it? Maybe 5 years ago, they changed the regulations, and they now require that if you put fill in a floodplain, you have to have compensatory excavation for it, or in this case, you just take it away, and,
Right.
and that would make it a moot issue.
Right.
So, although there's, and it's unfortunate that there's planting on it, the only way to save the plantings would be to provide compensatory excavation. Now, it's not compensatory for the whole pile, it's only compensatory for the
That-
portion of the pile that's inside the floodplain. So the bottom, like, I don't know if it's a foot or a foot and a half times that area is what they'd have to provide, not the whole volume of the pile. So that theoretically could be an option if you wanted to save the plantings. You
But the
could always do an excavation somewhere and not take the pile away.
Well, there's a, my
Kind of
guess-
weird way of looking at it.
The floodplain is here, so what Scott's saying, anything in this pile that is above the
410, I think it is.
410, that's the 410 contour here. Blow that up again. This is the 410 contour here. So
So you
this-
have two
That's the whole
feet.
mile.
we're saving 4 feet. Unfortunately, the trees and plantings are on the top, so it's kind of hard to save them. And with those, you saw the maturity of some of those trees, I doubt very much that we would be able to save them and transplant them or anything like that. It's not pretty, well, except for that one large oak. It's not great vegetation. Our plan would be to bring it down, restore it to what is shown on the FEMA flood maps, and be done with it.
Bill, what would your finished elevation be after the pile's gone? What would you take it down to? Which number?
Well, we've got 406 here, going up to 408 there, so there would be a slope
407, like in the middle?
on average.
Okay.
So if they take the pile away, you take the pile away and dig into the original, I think you'd probably be able to, your soil scientists would be able to tell where the original grade was.
More
My
than likely.
guess is it's low enough so that it's probably gonna turn into a wetland.
That's why we're proposing the New England wet mix as a planting for this area. I think trying to take a portion of it or compensatory storage, because again, in addition to the compensatory storage, we would have to prove that this pile does not raise the hydraulic grade by 0.0. You can't change it, so we would have to do a whole hydraulic analysis, which it's just not worth it. I just say, take it out, we'll take it off the site or to the front of the site where we do need some fill, if it's suitable, and be done with it.
I guess it's probably less than 550 yards.
How many truckloads is that?
It's, if it's staying on the same site, it's 25.
Just
It's
to
in
give
a
you-
well-orchestrated, that would be one-day job in a well-orchestrated environment, well-orchestrated, it's one day.
Yeah, what we would most likely do is take it for this fill area that's shown in here. So we're not talking about taking it off the site, or potentially not taking it off the site and use it if it's suitable right here. So we're not even talking about going onto Elm Street to do this.
Bill, that path, the access path, is that existing?
It is up to about right there.
Okay, so
From
so
there
you
to
would have to
there,
build,
it's,
so you would actually have to build a construction road to get trucks back there. You're probably better off just having compact, low ground pressure equipment bring it over to, if it's gonna stay on site.
right.
Not even build that road.
Well, it's there. The only
No, you
thing-
said if it stops there, but they
Yeah.
still gotta go another 150 feet with a dump truck.
Right. Now,
So-
if we can go this way and keep it within the regulated area and bring it over, we don't even have to go into the road. We can get around this without messing that septic system and bring it over. Even if we have to, we're going a very short distance on Elm Street.
My point being that in order to get, assuming that's a wet area or
With
sloping
this?
area,
This is not a wetlands.
not a wetlands, but wet, if it's near water, it's probably, you know, sometimes you just can't drive dump trucks just because there's grass there.
Yep.
So the time of work it would take to strip and put in something hard to get the dump truck close enough, you might be better off using like rubber track bobcats and just, I'm just saying for the
right.
purpose of doing it, and it might be less invasive than building that access road to get trucks closer.
There is an area through here, it's labeled as lawn, but as I say, it was where they cut out the knotweed and comes back up here. So, you're right, that might be a better way to do it. But if the commission approves it, we will come up with a plan as to how to, a computation first of the amount of material that's back there and how much of it we can use here, assuming that it's 100% usable, and we'll come up with a transportation plan, if that's the way the commission wants to.
So Bill, you're gonna need to do that before they're in a position to close the hearing and vote on this thing.
Well, the thing is, I have to know whether they want us to even touch it.
Oh, okay, that can be answered initially, but if they don't want you to touch it, then that's gonna also send you in a different direction, because you gotta address FEMA.
Yes, it will, even though it was done 30-some years ago.
If it was dug out of wetlands, it's probably wetland soil.
It did, Dave looked at that, and it did not appear to be that.
Well, you're not gonna know that, you'd have to dig through the whole pile to get to that.
Well, no, he's saying that if we dug it out to the south of us, in this area where the ponds are, and they put it over to here, it could be a wetland soil,
Oh, the whole pile?
or portions
Yeah,
thereof.
yeah, that's true, it probably was below the water table, a lot of that material that came out of there.
I don't know where this material came from. It would be very logical that it came out of these two ponds, but a lot,
It we were looking at the aerials,
right,
and we noticed, from what we could tell, it showed up when the second pond showed up. So the first pond was already there, the one closest to the river. And then when we noticed the second pond that's to the west of that, we also noticed the stockpile.
right.
So that's where we deduced that the stockpile was the material that when they dug out the pond.
I don't have this, I have a 1989 photo.
It's probably on the other one. I thought there was one on one set and one on the other.
All right.
There you go.
So
If you look at
a
this
soil
is-
scientist doing a probe on that pile might be able to answer the question. I mean, it's probably, it could be wetland soils that have dried out because it's sitting in a pile, but it's still gonna be wetland soils.
Well, as what Dave looked at it, it did not appear that way, although we're not saying any one way or another. But if you look at the 1990, you're not gonna be able to see it here, but there's a 1990 and the ones we had before was 1991. The shape of that pile changes. So this work has been going on, whether it's just out of these ponds or not, we don't know. It could have come from off-site.
Well, I think it makes sense to remove that pile and reseed it. I assume around, what's it look like around the property up adjacent to the wetlands? Is it wooded or is it,
Well, yes, this is all wooded in here.
so I'm talking upwards towards the houses.
This
On
is,
the other side, is it the meadow, is it,
That's the area that looked like lawn.
this
it's
is,
lawn?
They cut down
this
the
is the
knotweed.
house that exists there now. and we're proposing one here and here.
But I mean,
This
along
is-
the wetland area, it's all treed? Or
It's
is it-
treed up to a point, then you have this area that is a meadow or a
Yeah.
lawn as this, then you have this tree area
Another treed area?
that separates it from the houses.
I guess my personal feeling is that you move that pile, you plant a few trees in there, you spread it with your wetlands mix. As far as the meadow area, I wouldn't strip it, simply to put more seed down. I would prefer to see a few trees put back in there and left.
But he's saying that it's filled with invasives.
It
Well,
was,
it's
that's,
been mowed out by now, you don't think?
I don't know. When one of our people went out, he thought it was mowed as a lawn.
So it's probably as
Right.
good as it's gonna be, probably more likely if you stripped it and started fresh, you'd get,
All the seeds back in there.
yeah.
And this is what I was
you can
alluding
also
to when I
spread it
said that an assessment possibly, because, you know, usually you get a report from a soil scientist or a wetland specialist that would tell you, you know, okay, there's invasives, this is what you should do, this is, at this point, we got information from the engineer. That's what I
Well,
was.
the engineers are really smart people, so I might.
All right.
He's allowed to say that.
You are too, though, so.
True.
So anyhow, the idea is, does the commission want us to remove it and restore it? Or leave it the way it is and dig a hole in this area to provide compensatory storage? Hopefully, with that said, that there was not a floodway through here that we would be influencing.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I had asked, what my other comment that I provided was, I asked for what I think needs to be a more accurate representation of the floodway, because the floodway is scaled off of the FEMA map, and I noticed there's a note on here, it was an assumption that the floodway was the riverbank. And that's not the case, that's that you need to scale it off unlike the floodplain, which is taken off the profiles in the flood study. The floodway is actually scaled off of the FEMA map.
Well, a floodway is defined as a channel plus any adjacent floodplain areas that must be kept free of encroachment so that the 100-year flood can pass without substantial increases in flood height. So the idea, when the surveyor marked this, was that he placed the floodway at the top of these banks. Now, that being said, the idea is that the banks are created through erosion by major storms. So by putting the floodway at the top of the bank, it's an adequate representation.
Yeah, that's not accurate. I can tell you that I have considerable experience with FEMA in this issue as an administrator of their permit program, and I can tell you that that has come up, and I've asked them for detailed clarification on that issue. And the best example I could give you of that is I was involved with an application that had a substantial oxbow in a river.
Yep.
And I had a situation where the floodway actually was outside of the floodplain. And you say, how could that be?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when I talked to FEMA, they told me that they use much more than what you just said as their criteria to locate a floodway. And what they do is they run the HEC-ROS program for the flood study, but then they also look at other issues like, for instance, an oxbow. And what they do is they take the outer limits of that, because they know through time it'll eventually reverse itself.
Right.
So actually I had a situation where there was a 30-foot embankment outside the floodplain, and it was in the floodway. And they told me that because they predict that the day will come when the river will be over there. It's just a matter of the right storm or whatever. And they said that's only one of the things. They take into account a bunch of things to locate floodways. That's why, contrary to what I thought, that's why floodways are scaled off of their FEMA map, because they go through that process and they pictorially represent it.
No, so it may not follow contour.
It doesn't follow the contours. It doesn't follow logic in some cases. Seriously.
They're not engineers.
And that's why I had a couple of different applications, and the biggest one was the one that was baffling me, because like, how could a floodway be outside the floodplain, you know? And that's where I got an extensive explanation from them about, oh, no, you're supposed to scale it off there. And that's why I'm saying that if you scale it, I think you're gonna find that stockpile is in the floodway.
So then it should be removed.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's
Right.
prohibited.
Yeah, it's removed.
It's prohibited.
Right, that's.
Perfect.
Is remove it. And again,
Back
you
to my
have
original recommendation.
a 406 to a 404 contour, we will just,
Yeah, the only thing they
Critic.
allow in a floodway is a water-dependent use, like a bulkhead or a pier or a dock. And even those have other things attached to them.
there is a dam at this end of the project, which does show up on the FEMA maps. However, plotting that on here, the topo is different in various areas, so in any case, I think we can avoid all of that just by removing it and creating a flat plane using where it appears not to have been disturbed. And that's what we're proposing.
Sorry for that, Wendy.
Okay, so we want the pile to be removed,
Well, he needs fill, I think it,
or
But we don't
out
know
of the
what kind of
regulated area.
material it is.
But it will be out, if he's gonna move it any place, it would have to be out of the regulated area, so.
yeah.
Yeah, it's either gonna be here if it's suitable, or portions of it are suitable to the extent we need it, or the rest will be removed from site.
There's probably one big boulder under there, really.
What are those
If it was me digging, it'd
It's
be
New
one
England,
big
yeah.
rock.
It's New England.
Only if you're doing
Probably
it.
a giant boulder under there.
Forgive my ignorance, but I thought all water, can you explain to me, that particular river is only 100 feet instead of 150 feet for the setback?
It's on the reverse side of that handout I had. I believe that's an excerpt from 4.2C. And that lists the rivers that have the 150-foot regulated upland.
I didn't know there was a difference. That's-
Yes. Only select rivers in the town have 150 feet.
I didn't check the list, and I thought that it referred to a named water course, but
That's
I
what it
stand
says.
corrected.
That'll be reflected in your
It's gotta be
paycheck.
those
Scott.
names.
That'll be reflected in your check.
Which is what, I mean, the intent here was we showed the 100-foot, and we tried to keep all of the disturbance outside the regulator. That was the design intent of the plan.
Okay, and I've read, did everybody get a chance to read the comments from Aquarian? So they wanted the hay bales, they wanted some discussion with the crew, right? I don't have it in front of me, but.
I have a copy if you'd like it.
I have it here someplace. Hold on.
You gonna be able to read that?
They could zoom.
My suggestion was, sometimes what they do is they just scan the letter, reduce it in size, and plunk it on the drawing.
Would
You
be
want a
okay with
scanner
that?
just noted like we do for the engineering report?
Either way, I mean, sometimes it's easier if you just scan it, put it with your sheet.
It's
that
on the
has
D2
notes.
sheet, yeah. I mean,
Then it's there for the contractor.
no problem, but again, if we can make that as part of the conditions of approval, you'll have a review set anyhow.
Okay. So we can make that conditions. Oh, but you're gonna, so now that we're discussing removing this this pile, you're gonna have to come back with that plan on how you're gonna do that, right? Isn't that what we discussed?
Well, I mean, if we use the existing pad and get up to here with the erosion control we showed on the other sheet, whether we go here and dump it or go somewhere else off-site, I don't see that it makes any difference.
Yeah, so if you're saying that you're going to go onto the road, that's different than if you're saying you're gonna do it on site.
How?
No, I'm just saying, if you do it on site, I think you need to give them information, because obviously, at least it's obvious to me, that you're gonna have potential impacts. Because you don't know exactly what you're dealing with to get behind where those septic systems are gonna be.
Well, then in that case, we will say we'll come onto the road and go into here and fill there.
Yeah, no, I don't, I'm, just for the commission's sake, I'm not aware of any regulation that prevents them from doing that. The town tries to discourage it. We don't like having trucks coming out on the road and going around, but I'm not aware of anything that would prevent that from happening. Other than you guys can dictate that it stays on site, that could happen too.
Well, no, not if
But
it's
there
not,
normally have to be a reason for that.
not if it's not suitable material. We can't, I mean, we can use topsoil, obviously.
Yeah,
for
of
the
course, they
finished
don't know that at the moment. We don't really know what the material is. That's the other,
Nobody knows what the material
yeah,
is.
that's the other, if you want to know that, for instance, if it's wetland soils and you want them used somewhere, that's another issue. You don't really know what the soils are in there because they didn't give you an evaluation of that, other than a quick.
Do you have an area to use wetland soils?
Well, what kind of soils are, what kind of, maybe you can let us know what kind of soils are in the location of the pond from the
It's not our
soil
problem.
survey.
They don't know.
It's not our property.
No, but from the soil survey.
Yes, well, I mean, if this really is important, we can go out there and dig a test hole in the middle of it.
I'm not concerned. I mean, you're gonna get rid of them, you're gonna use what you can, if they're
Right.
not gonna be inside the setback area, and I assume that, if they're bad, you're not putting them underneath a driveway, and you're putting them in a lawn somewhere.
Right, so yeah, exactly. If it's topsoil, we'll use it on the lawn. If it's, just regular material.
They'll use it under the lawn, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as I said, there is some fill areas in here in front of these driveways, obviously not the septic area, but there is fill area in through there.
If even if it's organically, but its base is bank run gravel, it could be in a lot of, used in a
Dave
lot of
didn't
places.
think, it did not look like bank run gravel, although this area up here, the test holes are
It is.
very good. It's very free draining material. But now, he didn't do extensive, he's
Well,
just
look,
there.
if it's 500 yards and there's 300 yards of topsoil in it, they're gonna recover, because that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
They're gonna run through a screening plant and get the topsoil out of it, and then they'll be left with rocks. My biggest thing is that if you come to that end of where that access road is, where you think it ends, and, you have 12 inches, what's the test hole right there, Bill? Right there. How much topsoil is in that test hole?
that's test pit 1, it shows 12 inches of topsoil,
Then what?
12 to 24 yellow-brown fine medium sand, and 44 to 84 coarse sand and gravel.
So
No ledge, no water.
my guess is that you're gonna have to strip at least 12 inches of topsoil off that whole road all the way down, because that's coming uphill, right? It's
Uphill
going
to the
uphill.
bottom.
That's going downhill towards the water, right?
Correct.
So you have these, if you're gonna bring trucks down there, they're gonna need traction. They're not gonna be able to sink into the ground, so you have to take out anything that's not firm, and either dress it with gravel or hope that it's tight enough, it doesn't get stuck going up a hill loaded. So
Right.
my suggestion is that if a trail does not already exist that you can drive over with a truck loaded down,
Yeah,
that you come in with compact equipment and bring it across, whatever way you can, and not build it. I mean, it's gonna be cheaper anyways, to dig out all that dirt and then restore it.
right. Well, the thing is, this trail was most likely the road they used to originally create the stockpile. So I'm presuming
Well-
that it,
Maybe, if they didn't come out of that pond right there. If they came out of the pond right there, maybe it wasn't hauled in that way. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that, my point is that if you can't drive a truck through there right now the way it is, without doing like all this extra excavation work just to get the trucks back there, it should be done with compact equipment, low ground
going
pressure
up
equipment.
through this area.
Yeah, through there, but, rubber track, little excavator and bobcats and it's
So-
probably,
So Bill, what I was saying and what Keith's saying is either way, you should do some more exploratory work so you have a better handle on what you have to do out there. Because if you close the hearing, and they approve it, and then you get out there and you find out you gotta do as he's saying, you gotta dig some topsoil out of there so you can get, the load bearing on the drive. Or if you wanna go the other way with equipment on site, you gotta come back here. And it gets kinda messy if you're, in terms of processing this thing. I mean, to me, it seems like those are some questions that should be answered before you kind of close up things here.
Okay,
It's a bit of a risk is what we're saying.
unless they decide to just go with the less invasive way, regardless, and agree to it.
Yeah, if you say, okay, we're gonna truck it out to the road, and you find out that that driveway can't support it, now you gotta do excavation and all kinds of other stuff. I mean, that's gonna kick in more, different regulated activity. You're gonna be back before the commission again. Don't forget, you're not far from that pond on the abutting property. You're well within the upland review area, you're not
Yeah.
far from that.
is that what the commission wants, additional information?
Yeah.
All right, then I have it that we'll test the integrity of this trail as to whether it's load-bearing. We will do a stockpile, a test hole in the stockpile, which will give us an indication only of what we're dealing with here. And we will do another test hole here in this reserve area. Now, we are within the regulated area, we are adjacent to a wetlands, and I believe the new procedure is we need a permit to do that.
Say it again?
Because we're in the regulated area in doing the test hole down here,
Oh,
I need the commission to say that we are permitted to do that,
yeah, I mean, you're discussing it with the commission right
Right.
now, so.
just so you know that we are doing this and we're trying to follow the new
We're asking for
procedure.
it, so yeah. Anything else from the commission before we turn them loose to
Continue
handle
that?
that?
Yeah.
Scott, anything else?
The planting plan, you might want to just clarify kind of what you're looking for, unless I missed that. I know Jim was already talking about. In terms of when they remove the pile, I'm sorry, Bill, you were saying that you were gonna plant it with wetland seed mix. Does the commission want additional plantings, or is that adequate? Just so that if they're coming back, I want them.
All done, yeah, I get it. So, yeah, when they remove that pile,
When they
Saying
remove
they're
that
gonna-
pile and when they remove the invasives in the upland review area adjacent to it.
they were gonna put the meadow mix in the upland review and the regular wetland mix in that stockpile area.
Right.
Are you guys okay with that, or do you want more shrubs and trees?
So you have, there's no, they don't show really any trees on this plan that are already existing. I know there's white pines there, because I've driven by, and I know there
Yep.
must be some kind of deciduous trees by the riverbank. And obviously, it looks like there's some kind of trees growing on that pile, because I don't think 30-year-old dirt is on that sharp of an angle.
That is a close-up of it. There's a lot of pine. I don't know what this undergrowth is, but
I would say I think because you're changing so much of it, even to just add a little bit of structure, maybe put 5 small trees to grow in that area where the pile was. Kind of bring it back to what it is, well, you know, it's acclimated itself naturally, obviously, to having growth there. And there's some trees. If you're just going to meadow, you're making grass. That's my thought.
can we take out the dead pine?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
No.
No, all right, it's there.
As long as nothing's living in it, like wood ducks and stuff like that. You're in wetlands, right?
Not there, but it's very close.
Check that, you know? If it's gonna be lawn, this is gonna be,
No.
I mean, bear in mind that you guys don't have to tell them what you want there. You're saying to them, we want it, we want, if you do, I'm not saying you should, I'm saying if you want it planted, then their appropriate professionals should put together what they are recommending
Yeah, I
to
agree.
plant in that area, and then present it to you, and then you go from there.
now the purpose, the other purpose of doing this obviously is to take an eyesore out, correct? So after that pile is gone, what's the intended uses of that area? Is it allowed to be used?
No.
It's
It's
restricted,
actually,
right?
as he indicated, if people own the lot,
Yeah.
and there, as you know, in your regulations, there's permitted uses as of right in your property. If you want to bird watch, the kids want to play out in the yard.
But you can mow it? You can
No,
mow-
you can't mow it or clear it and that kind of stuff without a
So-
permit.
So then, every other time we have this situation where it's a remediation, we always ask for something to make it so that it can never be maintained again, because right in front of it looks like it could be
Well,
something that's maintained.
One of the
think we
reasons
can
why I brought it
maintain
up
it.
too is, sometimes sometimes there's a documented history that it already has been cleared in an acceptable fashion, or it was cleared before, in a state before the adoption of the regulations. So, sometimes there's an allowance by the property owner already has a right to continue maintaining it as a lawn. If it was established as a lawn before your regulations were adopted, they can keep it as a lawn.
But I'm talking about where they're gonna take out the dirt and restore it with, whatever they're gonna put the wetlands or meadow mix there.
Yeah, that was clearly wooded.
That was, so it should be either reestablished as such, so that it doesn't become like a lawn area, or it has to have the barrier that we require everybody else to have, so that it doesn't,
So what you're saying is you want to see that area planted more robustly than wetland seed mix?
Yeah, that's all I was asking.
Is that what you guys are saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to point out, this area is subject to invasive species. And possibly maintaining this area, mowing it, I think it's like twice annually, might cut down on the amount of invasives that we get. And from looking at that material, that other shot, you have invasives in there.
Where? Oh, wow.
This.
You're digging that out, so.
Yeah, I know, but it grew there. There's nothing saying it won't grow
yeah,
again.
we can't stop birds from pooping wherever they want, that's the reality of it.
That, but I mean, the idea is that by mowing it, they won't get established.
Well, that's why I was thinking you plant some trees in there, you mow it for 3-4 years, and the trees will grow, and then,
That's been kind of the pattern that you've been doing. You've been
and then you
looking
let
at,
the trees overtop, and
you have a standard 3-year monitoring that you typically are asking for. And that's mowed for 3 years. to kind of prevent the establishment of the invasives.
But that's in the area where we are removing the stockpile.
No, I would say the lawn area as well.
This area also?
Yeah,
Looks like they've been doing that.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think there's a lot of invasives in that lawn area. I
No,
think
that's
been-
because it's mowed.
Yeah, it's been mowed out.
Right.
Yeah,
So
so
that's what I would
quick,
say, plant, I would like to see trees put in there, some reasonable spacing. If you wanna mow it for 3 or 4 years to maintain it in good condition while the trees get larger. And then you step aside. And that way you don't need to tear up all that lawn to plant different grass, that doesn't make.
So come back with
seeds.
I would say
a
versus, because that was
planting
supposed to get,
plan for us.
that was supposed to get a different plant.
That's what
Yeah,
you're
that was
looking for,
gonna be
right?
torn up and reseeded.
That's part of the
yeah,
proposal.
so what I'm hearing
No,
is
it's
you're
not.
looking,
What?
you're
We
looking
would-
for some
It's not.
input from an
It's not part of the
appropriate
proposal.
Yeah.
professional
No,
that says
tear it
this is
out?
how you should do it.
Wasn't, didn't you say Upland was gonna be seeded in some sort of a?
Meadow mix.
If that's, to wetlands mix and.
After he does the test pits, he should have a plan that he presents to us that shows some kind of remediation
Yeah.
of what they're
I
doing.
just want a little clarification. So that area that's grass right there in the picture, or we'll call it whatever it is, which is low, you will walk through it. That in your proposal, nothing was happening to that.
That's correct. We're gonna-
Unless it's required.
Right, and we're continuing to
And you-
maintain it as it has been in the past.
And a suggestion that, I don't know who threw it, whether it's, the suggestion would be to convert it to a different type of plant material. That's,
If this turns out to be anything other than grasses and it's just mowed invasives, then yes, we would plant it.
because I would rather see trees 20 feet on center instead of a whole area being ripped up. That's just my suggestion. If it was gonna be, if it had to be done, I'd rather see trees planted 20 feet on center versus tearing up the whole entire field and disturbing all that soil. Less
So I think
invasive.
that's what we're
I
saying.
agree.
But that's where, I'm just saying, if someone was talking about converting it to the vegetation on the ground,
Well, that's what he said. He said if he needed to do something, he's gonna put in what they said was New England wetland meadow, or upland meadow mix.
yeah.
Technically showy wildflowers, but
Okay.
unfortunately Lois isn't here, but we could recommend white pines if we chose the tree.
You can get away with it tonight.
All right, so we'll continue it so that you can bring us that stuff on the road and the stockpile and then a different planning plan for that, for both areas.
All right, well, when we're doing this test holes and that, we'll try to identify what that is.
Perfect. Anything else for our next meeting, Scott? Okay, thank you very much. Our next meeting is October, is it 24th?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay. That is our only regulated activity, our only subdivision report. Moving on to enforcement. Notice of violation discussion, IWV 2018-1360 Flint Ridge Road, Smith, Wetland and Upland Review Area Disturbance. They're requesting an extension to tonight's meeting. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, professional staff. For the record, my name is Chris Smith. I am a land use attorney and the partner at the law firm of Shipman and Goodwin. And I first would like to thank you for extending/postponing this from your last meeting. I was working with Scott on this from when we first heard about it. I'll get to that in a moment. But again, thank you for doing that. I do appear before you this evening on behalf of RG Partnership LLC concerning an NOV that was issued for activities that occurred in an upland review area at the property known as 60 Flint Ridge Road, which is the subject property. The property is owned by RG Partnership LLC, and on behalf of the owner, this evening we have Greg Steiner. We also have Chris Steiner with us here this evening. The other component of our team, or member of our team, is Mr. Jim Cowan, who I believe you know. He's associated with Davison Environmental, and he is our wetland scientist, soil scientist, and a landscape designer who the Steiners retain, Davison Environmental. We do have a report that Jim will walk you through very shortly that was prepared actually by Michael Klein. And Jim has been to the property and agrees with the conclusions, and essentially that report will provide you, and Jim will provide you in a moment, with an assessment of the upland review area, and concluding that the activity that occurred has not resulted in an adverse impact, and the result of the activity is not resulting in an adverse impact to the pond, in this case, the wetland/watercourse. So, which is the reason why we're here this evening. I would like to just provide a quick overview. My clients, Greg and Chris Steiner, called me when I think it was your town engineer had gone out to the property because there is construction occurring at the lot. And he made some comments concerning activity in the upland review area. So I did get a phone call from the Steiners, and I did call Scott, who I've worked with over the years, immediately, and said that somebody was there at the property, and Scott said, oh, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe it was the town engineer, and he had just stopped by to talk to Scott about it. And so we were working with Scott right away, and who recommended that we do obtain a wetland scientist, soil scientist, to do just what the report we believe is done, and that is to provide an assessment, and then relative to the activity, to the resource that's there, and then provide you with recommendations. So I just wanted to be on board that we did respond. My client was very responsive, and Scott and Mr. Schatzleiner, Scott felt that it was stabilized enough, what was occurring there wasn't any ongoing issues, so that when I did request the continuance, because I was going to be away on vacation, Scott didn't have any issue with that. So having said all that, what I'd like to do with the permission of the chair is turn the floor over to Mr. Cowan, and I do have copies of the report that I can hand out to each of you for part of it, for the record, so that you have it while Jim's walking you through it. So if I may,
Yeah, you could,
Yeah.
so she can mark it.
and then pass it out.
Good evening. If you want to see the actual wetland delineated line, I do have it on a thumb drive that we could put on. I'm not sure the wetland line shows very clearly on there, but
Is it in the pictures that are attached?
not the delineation. The delineation is a little bit irregular.
I think on the left side, there's additional ports for the other side.
The other left.
Yeah, the other left. Am I right?
There's something is kind of blocking it.
Oh, you might have
There's something in
There's
there.
something there, Donna, but
might have a transmitter in it.
Yeah.
No, it's the
lock.
no, it's the display cable blocks part of it.
Okay, there's just two files on there.
Here you go.
Okay.
You could take it from there.
First one here. And let's see.
I'll grab it.
Yeah. Do you want to just, to the left, you can see the pond edge of water, and then there's the dotted line, which is the actual delineation. What I just wanted to point out here is about half the area that was shown on the previous graphic that was in pink, about half of it is upland review area, and the lower half is wetland. So there was activity, and the activity, so anyway, this is background, and then the silt fence is all the way to the right.
So for clarification, so this line here,
That's the wetland delineation.
and it comes down and then over here,
Yeah,
and then down.
right.
So everything from here to the lake is wetlands? Is that what
Yes,
you
yes.
Okay, because I thought there was like a peninsula sticking in here, but
No.
you're saying it's this to the lake?
Yes.
Okay.
And you can see there's a flared end in the lower right, there's a drainage easement, and that is right at the wetland edge. So in other words, town drainage contributes or created this wetland. Okay, so there's a drainage easement that comes down into that area. And at that point, today it was very wet in looking at it. Michael Klein with our office, he looked at it in September. His comment that there has been clearing of the understory and cutting back of the Phragmites, which has started to come back, but that there was no evidence of any erosion or soil disturbance from those activities, and there was no evidence of any adverse impacts to the flagged wetlands or adjacent pond. And our assessment is that this would be an excellent opportunity to control the invasive Phragmites and eradicate it through a program of herbicide treatment, which would probably require 2 or 3 applications. And so, yeah, so we have the pictures here also.
And I'm just going to interject really quick while we're looking at for the pictures, but the activities essentially comprise lawn cutting, so to speak, or mowing of the area, and that has been historically done. The Steiners have owned the properties all around this lake forever, I think, just about. And Greg bought this lot, I think the father's house was on here, and Greg grew up on the lake, but he's been mowing this, as we heard somewhat with the, I think, the prior application. So that was some of the activity that's been occurring. And then there was a large tree that came down one of the nor'easters last February, March, when we thought summer was upon us. And that was cut up and then chipped. And then after that was removed, that area where it was seeded. So that was the activity that occurred and was referenced in the NOV at this point in time. So that's been historic maintenance of this lot, which has occurred with other lots on along the lake. That again, and Greg is here and can certainly testify to it if you report it to you if you'd like to hear it. But he's been doing that historically on this lot in particular, but on other lots that the family has owned and does own over the years since he was much younger than he is today. So
my father and uncles built, and Chris's grandfather built this lake in the late 50s, early 60s as part of the subdivision. And at that time, we actually lived at 69 Jockey Hollow. We were one of the few people that actually had Lakeview. And in 73, we moved this 45 Jockey Hollow, which is where we had Lakeview. And then over time, the company we kept all our lots, and over time, we would sell off individual lot to individual builders over the time. Kenny Olson was our floor guy who owned the house next to it, which was taken down and now replaced on that size. He had bought both lots, and then in the late mid-80s, he decided he was going to move to Colorado, so we thought it would be a good thing for the family for me to be able to buy. So I bought that piece of property back from Kenny Olson, who then moved out. Mr. Zawali now owns it and built the house. So we've had this I've had it as a personal investment. One day I thought I was going to live on the lake. I've got other things going on in my life now. So we finished the 4 on Jockey Hollow last fall. This is 4 on Jockey Hollow. We finished it. This is the last one that we have. We have a piece of property we sell, but right now we want to get this. We're putting up a spec house on this exact lot. And then we were, like I said, I've been cutting this since I grew up in 45. Once a year we come across with a brush hog and just kind of make it look like that. So that's what we did again.
And what Jim is going to walk you through now is how much of the understory that we're talking about that's been cut involves invasive species, and now is an opportune time relative to the invasives to come up with a plan to address that issue, because it is there. But that essentially has been what's been cut. But I'll turn it back over to Jim.
Right.
I was going to tee it up at the beginning before I handed it off. So.
Is this a natural lake, or is it something that
No, it was man-made.
man-made back 30s, 40s?
No, late 50s, early 60s. I got my father, when he retired, I got a subdivision. It was just a one-page, and it was like the 150 lots around it, and it just showed like a big, kind of the size of it. It was just all the lines, they all come to the center, way before any regulations or anything. So
wow.
we we dug it out, it's probably 12 to 15 feet, maybe 20, 50, a little deeper at the far end of the dam is, and then it was less up as you got more to the east side. We had a couple of years ago, well, maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was a section that was the beach used to be next to our house on Jockey Hollow, because the area was kind of swampy to the east side, and then maybe 20, 25 years ago, is that we had deeded that property to the town, to the association that runs the lake, and then they had gone and actually moved the beach and then dug out the lake, maybe 85, 86, when I was in college maybe, and then that's when the beach was then moved over to their deeded lot, and then we sold that property next to my house at 45, which is maybe 60 part. And then there was one next to one that Jim actually did a few years later that was a smaller house that's right along the street, right across from where Chalk Hill comes out. So over time, the company, as we needed to, we would sell a lot here or there. We were busy building in Bethel area, so we never would come back for a lot at a time. That's kind of the history. And I have always owned this, and then we figured, well, we're down and finishing up those last 4 at Chalk Hill. It'd be a great time just to give up the guys, everything's mobilized, let's come out and finish this one.
It was all beautiful gravel underneath this, all the gravel was used for the adjacent roadways and construction.
Wow.
So that's where all the gravel came from, around that, that whole neighborhood, to build the roads.
So in looking at the, I did a quick vegetation survey, and it was very easy to do because it had all been cut. And what I found in the upland review area is primarily, or a lot of multiflora rose, some mugwort, and bittersweet, in addition to grasses. That obviously grasses are favored when you brush hog or mow periodically. And so, and there are, so that's in the upland review area. In addition, there's some bittersweet in the wetland, multiflora rose, and some reed canary grass with the Phragmites. So I did not see any native shrubs that were cut in this area. It was all multiflora rose and bittersweet. There were a couple of native vines that are common there. There's wild grape and Virginia creeper, which are growing on the ground, and they'll grow back easily. There's no damage to those. In addition, in the wetland, there's tussock sedge, Joe pie weed, some smartweed, and other grasses. So there's enough native plants there that when the invasives are eradicated, the natives will fill in the area. And there's clearly an adequate seed bank that you cut back the invasives and the native stuff's just going to thrive. So it's an opportunity, and now the invasives still are in more active growth as the native stuff is going dormant. So it can be a suitable time. I would defer to an herbicide expert in terms of what would be appropriate this time of year with a follow-up in the spring or early summer. And so that's our recommendation. It's an opportunity to really enhance what's already there. And let me just page down to some of the other photos here. One of the things, this is a good one. Unlike many of the lots, this lot has a number of trees on it. So it's one of the few lots that has a significant tree canopy over the wetland and upland review area. And the intent is to maintain the tree canopy and allow native plants to grow in once the invasives are removed. But really is quite a nice lot, and trees, here again you see some of the trees at the edge of below the silt fence.
I'm sorry, Chris Smith, just for the record, the lawn that you see, that's actually the adjacent lot.
That was the original lot that had the original lakefront view from Kenny Olson, or Forest Center, so he had cleared all the trees down. So when I was a kid, that was the only lot across the lake that we lived at. You could see a house, and then over time, before regulations, we would sell a lot, and then one would pop up, and then get cleared out that way.
So this lot is commendable, which provides some significant benefit. So it's very, I think it's pretty straightforward, but happy to answer any questions.
And again, the activity was something that has occurred historically. There was the large tree that was, as you can see, the trees are there. Wasn't, the Steiners didn't go in and just start clear cutting. It was one big tree that came down and they just cleaned it all up and got it out of there. When they did that, seeded it. And so essentially you have as all the resource that, as Jim described it to you, and that was something that Scott wanted us to do, explain, well, look, you have to get an expert, have him take a look at he or she, what's going on, come up with a recommendation if you have any, but certainly stabilize it so the commission wants to ensure, and your professional staff does, that there's no adverse impact resulting from any of the activities there. So it doesn't have to go to the next level of dealing with the cease and desist order, which of course the Steiners are not interested in getting involved with anything like that with this commission or the town. So we respectfully submit to the commission again that there's no adverse impact occurring. Nothing has occurred relative to these minor activities, I would suggest, with the property, and there won't be any resulting adverse impact associated with what is it, hog brushing? The mowing that's occurred. Brush hogging. I'm a country bumpkin from Northridge. Yeah. You should know these things. And in that one tree that was cut up and then it was seeded afterwards. So.
But I'd like to see a hog brush. I think that would be quite interesting.
Okay. Come out to Hannah, that's right.
So I just will mention there is one other plant that's growing it there quite abundantly, and that's sensitive fern. And as you know, that readily will spread in. So that's a good wetland plant that's there as well.
So I guess as part of this, we're requesting respectfully the permission to perform the treatment with the invasives. I don't know if we need to do that, but that's something that we'd like to do, the client would like to do. And
I have a question, because, my conversation with you earlier in your presentation now, my question is, can you tell them what your finished product, what your target is for that? And then also, what are you looking for in terms of, if anything? Are you saying you're going to remediate this and the future limit of use or disturbance is going to be where these markers were proposed here? Or are you saying that you want some type of area opened up for use where you're going to put the markers and that kind of stuff down in here? I'm a little bit confused about where you're going.
I think it's just to maintain it the way that it's been maintained to date, with the brush hogging or whatever occurring periodically as
So,
it has,
okay, so you're looking to put a
spec
spec house on it and say that the restriction on this would be that they would have permission, whoever lived there would have permission to mow it or use a brush hog once a year, that kind of thing?
Right, maintain it as a meadow, and Greg said that he was able to do it on one of the times when it was dry. So obviously you can't get a brush hog in there when it's wet.
Right, so in other words, it would not be a lawn per se that has grass that are mowing all the time and that kind of thing.
No, go ahead.
So the wetland would be maintained, managed as a wet meadow. And the upland review area could be mowed more frequently. So it would be like you would have, like on a golf course, you have the rough and the lawn. And so.
So is there markers out there?
At the moment, when the house was permitted through the building department process, it's under construction, and so the proposed plan that was approved showed markers at the limit of where their septic's right over here, I believe. It's not on this plan, but there were some markers that were coming across the back here. And that's why when our inspector was out there, he saw that they had gone into this area beyond the markers. Typically, we would not expect to see anybody, disturbing beyond the markers. They've already, explained to you why that happened and what the history is there. So I'm trying to get a better handle on what the future, what's allowed for once someone moves in, because we're gonna have to look at articulating that in the, you know, in a way that the people who move in understand what what they're getting, you know?
Well, the
But before
markers,
we can do that, we gotta, I wanted you to be clear about what you were asking for.
no, okay, and that's exactly, we talked about that. So it would be, as Jim indicated, to maintain it somewhat, you know, the way that it is and has been, but also to, if we can, to provide the treatment for the invasives. And I presume if the invasives are under control and the native plants come in, then the mowing's not going to be occurring as frequently, just because those invasives aren't going to be there, bittersweet and some of the other things you mentioned. But
Right,
that would be
we don't know what
the
the
markers
new,
would stay.
right, and we
The
don't know.
markers stay out here, where they are, you're saying?
It must be along where the upland review area is.
Yeah, it's along the edge of the
That's what
upland.
we've done before, yeah.
Yep, okay.
Yep, oh, yes. And we
So
talked about that.
so what you're saying is from this point here where the markers went in, all the way back, once a year, you're looking at a seasonal mowing, or a brush hog.
Well, I would say probably more, seasonal in the lower level and in the upland review, maybe a few more times.
Yeah, see, it gets hard to manage because, I don't know, I'm just saying, like, how do you enforce something like that?
And how do people know where the upland review and how do the people they know because they built it, but when they sell that house,
The markers.
but there's markers that, but he's saying that you're gonna mow the upland review more often than the wetland, or, you know, whatever, grub it, brush hog, whatever terminology you wanna use.
Well, would you?
So say whoever goes in there and buys that, how are they gonna know? And how are we gonna know that there's not continual violations going on?
Yeah,
There could be another
it's
set
hard.
of markers, there could be two sets of markers with different description on it.
Someone's gonna buy that house and mow all the way down to the lake, plant it in grass so they can run to the lake. That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's why, like,
That's what I would do if I bought
to
that
be
house.
honest with you, what I kinda expected, maybe I'm wrong here.
Damn the violation.
What I kinda expected was, that you were going to, like, have call it a pathway that would be allowed to be maintained. So they can go from the house to the lake like everybody else does, like they're gonna do anyway, like you just said. But then have the markers established so that the rest of it is left so that it's not disturbed, you know? Now, if seasonal mowing is what's gonna have to happen in order to prevent those invasives from coming back, then that's another issue, but. Anyway, that's what I was thinking, so, I don't know if that's even doable, or, you know, that's why I was asking for clarification.
Well, you know what, it was just sidebarring with Greg and Chris, and I think just to keep it simple with the posting the markers and then just once a year doing this mowing.
Yeah, if you're fine with that, then
Which
that's,
is that's pretty much what's occurred there in the past. The thought was,
so they've got a good view of the lake, and they obviously have the passive use where they can walk down the lake through the meadow.
and the trees are there. It was only after, you know, Jim went out and came up with the idea of we have all these invasives and we
Yeah,
can possibly
okay.
treat them, that we thought, and that's one of your missions or whatever goals, you know, is
So
to
a
do
s-
that. So
a
we just threw that in
seasonal,
there, so.
a seasonal treatment is more, that's something we could probably enforce, you know, like if they're not doing it once a year and it's an obvious manicured lawn, then we know that they're not doing it.
8-foot wide area that they can mow weekly so that people can walk down there and not have to.
Well,
walk
again,
through.
they're saying that they're gonna seasonally cut this stuff, it's gonna be a meadow, and they're gonna walk through the meadow, they're gonna create a little path through the meadow, is what you're saying.
Well,
I mean,
I would think, but like, you know, if I had kids or something, I wouldn't want walking through 3 feet of grass with ticks and everything else. You know, eventually someone's gonna try to find a way to maintain something clean to the,
Yeah.
so why don't we just grant it to them now so that they have it and maybe take, you know, maybe remove those, you know, so they have, so they're allowed to do it, just 8 feet wide, one up and down, one sort of
so
mower.
along this edge here, see the wetland line comes here. This is higher on this side. This is the lowest side, the wettest side
Yeah, that's
down
what
here. The
the
drain is here.
Drain should have
The Phragmites is primarily here in the wettest area.
Yeah, that's a good, you could have
You could come right down here with a path to the water's edge, and you could maintain that, mow it as needed, or put wood chips or something.
so you could run the markers
Yeah.
across the back and then down that side.
And that would be easier for enforcement, because if suddenly it's well beyond that whatever it is, 8-foot
Right.
strip, then it's easy enough to come in and say, look, this is what,
Yeah, and that's a good point, because he's right, like, they're gonna do it anyway. They're gonna try to, if you have a meadow there, you know they're gonna mow, you know.
This
I would
makes the
wanna do
fun.
that, I'd take my mower so that the kids, you're right, they're gonna say they're gonna get
Won't push
ticks
it.
if you don't do it.
Well, and I'll just say from a mower point of view, this area is clearly drier and people can mow, but down here it gets very wet. And so this is not an area that you're gonna be
Well, you
I
mowing.
say pick the path, you get your choice, whatever works best, but you get it, 8 foot wide to the water.
We would just go right along that.
Right, this is clearly, this is higher, obviously, this is not wet all the way to here,
Yep.
and it wasn't flagged beyond this area. It does clearly below here get wet, but you could, it's still, you could mow or have a wood chip path.
Well, they're not supposed to do it on the wetlands anyway, so.
Yeah.
If you put the markers down your wetland strip there, so that way they can't go
Yeah,
pass into it and mow,
yeah,
that's what you're gonna have to do, because
yeah.
otherwise.
So, I'm sorry, so Jim, the fact that the wetland kind of takes a turn and goes down there, that's probably, I'm gonna guess, that's probably because it originally was wetland there, and that when they built that other house, they probably filled that, correct?
I think it's just the ground.
It's just following the
I think it might have been the other way around. It might have, this might not have been wet except for the town drainage that came out and didn't have a direct shot into the lake. Because it's meandering itself all and just filling in that whole.
Right, so that wetland kind of juts back and forth all
Yeah,
around.
I mean,
There's a lot of water that comes out of that drain, and, it doesn't meander, there's no trench or swale that gets into the lake. It just kind of stops, and over time, the sand and stuff like that, it got blocked up. It meandered itself along the 390, 380 elevation line, just kind of worked its way there. That's why it's been so wet there.
but if you go along the property line, as I walked along
Right.
here, this topo is not all that accurate. I mean, this is substantially higher right along the property line. And so there's clearly dry land along here,
Okay.
down quite a ways. And at some point, it does become wet, but you could be on dry land for quite a ways. And so it would make sense to have your path over there, just from feasibility. You're not, having wet feet because it's not soggy.
So
All right.
perhaps like in the decision, just indicating whatever the findings and conclusions that, that can be done subject to, reviewing and, administratively with your professional staff and getting them to sign off on it, and then having, being able to maintain that 8-foot strip, and then having the once a year for the balance. I think that would work, and that's kind of what's been going on there anyways, but for this additional strip that we're talking about, which I think would be great.
And those
All right, so
markers.
you're talking about revising, you would revise the plan to show the markers and to add a note indicating the allowance for the annual, I don't know if we call it mowing, but.
How would the treatment, or we just talked with you about the treatment, I'm not sure how that would be worded, but.
Yeah, well, annual cutting, and it could either be done when it's dry, or sometimes it's done when the ground's frozen. And so then you're out of the growing season.
But if that's added to the.
I mean,
plan,
isn't there a
the
specific
buyer's gonna
time of
see
year
that,
that's
so-
better so that you're not spreading seeds?
It's not so much that. Usually for wildlife, I like a cutting in late winter, early spring, because then birds have been able to use the seeds all winter for food when they're migrating.
Because I thought I read that the best time to cut is early winter because everything's dormant and you're not spreading any seeds around.
Well, there would be, I mean, it depends on what species. Like there was just the Ag Experiment Station just came out with a study that if you cut mugwort before September 21st, it doesn't set viable seed. So there is mugwort there.
Yeah.
So, but we're going to try to eliminate that. And as this commission knows, mugwort is really a difficult plant to control. And so that was good research that came out in terms of cutting it. So, and that's, mugwort is growing in this area.
Trouble is, you just can't beat Mother Nature.
Right, right. Well, so there's not a perfect time. And on this, in being in a wetland, you have to do it either when it's dry or frozen. And I don't know if you've ever done it, Greg, when it's been frozen out.
Yes,
Yeah. And that's easier. So you don't get stuck. So that's what I would recommend. But, you know, if the owner's a nature lover, they may decide they want the wet meadow to become a wetland. I mean, it is.
That's true too. I mean,
They may not want to cut it every
there
year.
are people that'll say that, I'm not bothering with that, and they're gonna just let it go.
Because, I mean, it is really wet. So,
So
as long as you have an access here, there's less incentive to cut this, except for your views.
So, you're coming up with the wording on the note, you know, we're
Okay.
looking for the note on the plan, so.
Okay.
Centered around that it's allowed to be cut once a year.
Yeah.
And-
You know, yeah, we will say like, you know, between December and March, or alternatively when it's dry in the summer.
So is
We can
this going to
certainly
be a
get that.
remediation submission?
Well, I think we're getting to that now. It's like, what's happening is you know, as you guys are kind of figuring out at this point, there are some people that come in on this NOV informal discussion. They come in before you with a plan of attack, if you will, you know, with a proposal for doing something, and it kind of preempts. You know, normally you'd be sitting here saying to them, well, okay, we want you to either do it administratively or come before us with an application. What I'm hearing tonight is they're kind of here before you with their application. They don't have the plan to the extent, but they've described it. So the question is, did they give you enough information where you can say, okay, wrap it up as an administrative thing, or do you need them to come back and actually?
I think that we
show
all
you the
agree
note?
what the end game should be. Are you comfortable enough if they come back with what we just talked about? Are you comfortable enough making it?
Remember we had discussions about this.
No, what we do is, yes, we did have a discussion. So I am comfortable in this case. So what would happen is you would get, if they agree with that, you would get a letter of determination from the commission. And it would say that they approve what you proposed, subject to, and they would list it. And it would say, you know, subject to adding a note to the drawing, you know, providing a drawing, adding a note that says that, you know, seasonal cutting is allowed between such and such time, and that a maintainable pathway of no more than 8 feet is allowed along the westerly property, is it westerly? Northerly property line, and then I can administratively do the review of that, like a review of approval. You would also fill out, we have a form, it's not an application, it's like an application form that you would fill out, so that we have something for the record that's administrative. And then there is a $60 fee because any notices of violations have to be sent to the state for their item. So because you're not going, if you were submitting your remediation plan to the commission, then there'd be a fee for that. You're not doing that, so that we don't charge a fee for the administrative one.
And
So does that sound like what you guys were looking for?
Right, and then if whatever comes to you is dramatically different than we talked about, then they just have to
Yeah,
come back with a
absolutely,
full.
yeah. If I'm not comfortable
That's for
with
me
it,
to
then
make
I
sure I
would say
understand
no.
properly, yeah, you say, you know, this is way different, let's go back to the commission.
Yep.
And I just, one question for clarification. Are you agreeable to us going after all the invasives out there? in addition to the Phragmites, because our letter says Phragmites specifically, and we'd like to add to it the other invasives.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
We could possibly add that to the final note to go on the plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
As long as you make sure you put your markers in there.
Well, what it'll include as well is it'll include a requirement for 3 years of monitoring. That's their standard requirement whenever there's invasive treatment and/or plantings.
Okay.
So like 3-year monitoring.
Okay.
And pathway. All right.
In the
So,
markers, obviously.
it's a remediation, so, again, this isn't an application where you're all in consensus that that's what you want,
Do we need to do a time frame?
yes. In this case, there's a building permit issue, so you can tie it down to something related to that. Are you guys okay with, well, you should be okay. I mean, basically, all you have to do is change the plan. So it's required prior to getting a CO.
We'll actually get plans.
How's that?
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Really, the only work they're doing is the markers, and then the
Yeah.
monitoring. and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Markers
first-
and invasives.
First treatment, so they can do it before they, I think all you got is your footing stuff in, right?
Yeah, the slabs report today.
Oh, you poured the slab. So the foundation's there,
Foundation.
so they got time.
Right.
Things happening. The silt fencings will remain in place, obviously.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is IWB 2018-14, 731 Main Street, Safehaven 731 Main Street LLC, installation of light poles, clearing of understory and fill and/or debris with 100 feet of an upland review area. We received an email from property owner addressed to me and Scott, and I've already okayed this, as long as it's okay with this commission, that they come back for the next meeting.
Sounds fine.
The representative, the only representative that, as it was relayed to me, the only representative that they were, that could report tonight didn't really have any information. And they hope to, in 2 weeks, come back with some real information for us. So I kind of said that was okay with us. I hope that's.
Yeah, and I've been in contact with them about what I think the expectations are, so hopefully they'll be ready to talk to the next meeting.
We just kind of avoided wasting them coming here today for no real gain. Maybe next meeting, maybe we get something done.
It
So-
happens frequently because by the time we get the notices out, it's almost the meeting, so you know the drill.
So everybody's okay with moving that to our next meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Moving on to application hearing determination, IWC 2018-12, 236 Turkey Roost Road, Cahill, proposed 3-bedroom, single-family dwelling and associated site work.
No, we don't need any sketch for this. If that's what you're doing, I'm just removing that. All right, 236 Turkey Roost Road. This is a proposal for a 3-bedroom, single-family dwelling with associated site work. You may recall that there was a violation on this property, that they had cleared a row of pine trees or something like pine trees along their driveway. And we had reported it to you guys, and they came in and they indicated that it was being used for equestrian, so it was under the farming, and they needed to cut the trees because they had a big horse truck that they had to get in. And
Is that really big property with the horse rings in front?
Yes,
I do remember.
yeah, and
You know, it's really big.
the what?
It's really big, right?
Yeah, it's really big.
Yeah.
So they are now, wait a minute, I'm confusing these. Hold on a second. Yes, I'm getting confused. So let me look at the plan, make sure I got the right one. I haven't really reviewed these yet, so. I have the wrong one. Okay, so 236 Turkey Roost Road is a proposal to build a single-family dwelling on a piece of property that already has an existing house on it. So what they're gonna do, they're proposing to come in and they wanna live in the house while they build the new house. And, yeah, I don't wanna, well, I guess.
It's the same plans you're
Yeah,
looking
okay,
at.
all right.
Okay.
Um,
Move
yeah,
that
I
we
don't
go to
wanna
a
get
public
too far
hearing.
into it because it's not applicated.
Okay.
That's fine, thank you. So, they're proposing to live in the house and build a new house, and when the new house is done, take the original house down. So it is a piece of property that involves 1.01 acres, and the wetlands on the property is 0.39 acres. The upland review area is 0.556 acres. They are proposing no direct wetland impact, and they're proposing a 0.197 acre impact of the upland review area. One suggestion, again, I haven't reviewed it, but one suggestion is that the concern is if they have a house that's not in the regulated area, and they're building a house that's in the regulated area, one would say that there's an alternative to building in the regulated area. So I think that a suggestion would be to request that they provide you with alternatives in this case, and an explanation as to why they can't build a new house outside of the regulated area. I mean, other than they want to live in the old house.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, there was a discussion I had, this was quite some time ago they came in, and it might center around the septic system and what's appropriate for that, but the septic is further back in the property, and
Still.
I just don't remember. But, so we can provide that request as part of the acceptance letter that goes out, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
So obviously you need to decide now whether you want it to be a regular hearing or public hearing.
So is this a
He just,
subdivision?
Yeah, I heard it, I'm waiting.
he already,
House.
I already did.
he already did.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Stewart to move this to a public hearing. Do I hear a second?
I second.
And that's because of the proximity and potential
A second by Commissioner
It's not a
Masterocco.
subdivision because they're tearing
All those in
down
favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Move to public hearing.
Okay, next one is the one I started to talk to you about, and that's the one that had a violation originally. Horses, and
I'm sorry, I need to just clarify again, what was the reason for the public hearing?
The proximity and the potential risk to land.
okay, so this next one is the one I was telling you about, the very large house. They're putting a large addition on the house, and they, interesting, they're proposing an addition, but the regulated activity that they're proposing is actually a solar panel field, where they want to, it appears that they want to go in all along the wetlands on a construction access drive, which that drive is there, a driveway of sorts is there for the, I don't know why it's there. I guess it originally was a horse farm, and then they took the horses away and they want to bring them back now. So they want to bring in their access along that route, put in a solar panel field out next to the wetlands in the upland review area, And they also want to expand their recharge system, which is also in the upland review area. So that's what they're proposing. It is on a piece of property that is 17.68 acres. Within that acreage, they have 8.8 acres of wetlands. Upland review areas on the property are 3 acres. And they are proposing no direct wetland impact, but they're proposing a 0.03 acre impact to the upland review area. And again, I haven't reviewed this, but my reaction to that is I think that number is incorrect because they're, in my opinion, they are going to impact that farm road or that grass road that goes all along the wetlands. So I think that they're, at least they're temporary. They may have a temporary impact to the upland review area that's bigger than what they're indicating. And that's pretty much it.
I make a motion that we bring this to a public meeting.
I have a question about this plan. Is this the entire 17-acre parcel or just a portion of it?
Well, let me take a look.
It's like a
Well, I
portion.
think for us to kind of see what everything's going on, we should see the whole property, right?
Yeah, typically your regulations require a survey. It is not the whole property, that's correct. I don't see well, the whole property is shown on OS1.
Yeah.
It's not a survey, it doesn't look like a survey plan, though. It's not certified. Again, I haven't reviewed this. I don't see a survey plan here, and that would be something that you may or may not want. I mean, that'll come out when I do the review. But to answer your question, if you wanted to see the extent of the property, you'd look on the sheet
Next one.
OS1.
Yeah.
So that recharge trench is just for the solar?
No, the recharge that they're adding to is because they're putting an addition on the house. Big garage and an addition onto the house. So they're
But there's
increasing.
okay, but there's two. There's one next to the solar array.
Yeah, well, that's an impervious area as well. That's gonna increase runoff as well.
That recharge trench, it's like at the bottom of a very steep hill.
Oh, they have 2 septic systems here?
It looks that way, yeah. There's a separate apartment.
Fancy. And they don't want to see their solar panels, obviously.
That's probably just.
Well,
that's
that
position
appears
of the
that way,
property,
yeah.
right?
You think so?
Probably the highest
I would
ground.
think so. They probably do studies to find out where the best spot on the property is for the best amount of.
Well, you could
I
ask,
don't know. I'd love to see a picture because we're going to ask them because you could probably put it right in their backyard too.
There's a lot of.
Bet you
big-
they got a nice view of that lake.
There's some big oak trees.
and
on the
that'll
property.
come out when you have your meeting, but,
Yeah.
yeah. So, in the acceptance letter, we'll also indicate that you're looking to have the amount of upland review area kind of updated to reflect the temporary disturbance in this dirt drive. In a way, you might have a similar issue to the application you had tonight with, exactly what can that driveway support in terms of construction equipment and things like that.
Interesting stuff going on.
All right, I believe we had a motion by Commissioner Gingrich. Do I hear a sec, to move this to a public hearing? Do I hear a second?
I second.
Who did it?
Yeah.
A motion by Commissioner Gingrich, second by Commissioner Monroe to move this to a public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously.
And the reason for it was,
Same one as the before. Too much activity in the review and
Proximity to the
proximity to
wetlands.
the wetland.
okay,
Okay, we don't have anything to deliberate on, right? Okay, Scott, no bond release, reduction reports, no time extensions, inland agent activities report.
so we got 4 Forest Road, permitting of an existing deck reissued, and 68 Garter Road, a shed in an upland review area. Permitted uses as of right, nothing for the Public Works Department this meeting, but we have permitted use as of right that we're processing for 19 Richards Drive. This is a property that has a concrete sluiceway or ditch line, very well-defined concrete sides and bottom that's filled up with silt and plant growth, and they want to dig that out. It's in a front lawn area. So I need a jurisdictional ruling on that, if you're okay with that being an agent.
Yes.
Excuse me, a permitted use.
Permitted use as of right. I won't make that jurisdictional rule.
Okay.
Do I need to vote it?
Yeah, why don't you do it just to,
Motion.
To grant the jurisdictional ruling?
Yes, of course.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gingrich. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? So approved.
next one is 55 Richards Drive. This is a septic repair, and this is something that we've had a lengthy discussion with the health department on over the course of a couple of years now. And what it involves is quite a few applications or situations where they are doing or requiring septic repairs, which are in people's backyards, and there's really there's not much in terms of alternatives. And we talked about the fact that they're in an upland review area. They kind of need a permit. And we were trying to process them as agent approvals, but we would be inundated. So we kind of came to the conclusion that we could kind of do them as, and I'm providing this for the first one, but this explanation, we could kind of do them as permitted uses as of right, because they're allowed to maintain their infrastructure for their house, and that's what they're doing. They're maintaining that by fixing it, but it needs a permit, and that's why it's a permitted use as of right through the health department, and that's what that involves.
Scott, there's also a setback too, isn't it 25 or 50 feet
Setback for what?
from wetlands?
There's a setback in the health department, yeah, and this isn't near the wetland. It's in the upland review area though, so it's.
What I'm saying is though, it's in the upland review area, but it's gotta be so far, part of that is out of play anyways, just by the regulation of the septic.
From my recollection, they have to be 25 feet away from a water source, so like a stream or something like that. But theoretically, you can build a septic system in a wetland. It just doesn't ever happen because
The soils are no good.
the soils are no good.
So
right?
I'm saying, my point is that it's by the default of going through the wetlands application and process of designing a repair, you're kind of out of it anyways, right?
Yeah, but it warrants a permit per the statute, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get
So
it.
we decided that the most appropriate would be to handle them as permitted uses as of right. So I may have a bunch more coming to you now because, as I said, there's too many to do as an agent.
So let's bring them to the commission.
So you just do the jurisdictional rulings.
Okay. I need a motion to make a jurisdictional ruling, like we did for the last one. Someone make a motion.
Motion, jurisdictional ruling.
Second.
That it's acceptable as a.
Yes.
As acceptable as a permitted use of right. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed, any abstention?
Donna knows what I meant.
Jurisdictional ruling is approved.
She's got it.
All right, so the next item is, there weren't any deliberations, you didn't have, we don't have any administrative reviews this time, for a change, I guess. And, under status updates, I provided you guys with we have a follow-up, the first of the follow-up reports for Edgerton. I don't know if you remember that, they had a big area that they were using for storage, and they quite a busy plan on restoring that area. They took away the outside storage and restored it. And I gotta say that they provided the photos. Go down some more and you'll see the photos, and it's looking good. It's looking real good. I haven't seen it personally, I'm just looking at these photos, but you got the report there. I think they're talking about some invasives and some treatment that they need to do, so they're gonna let us know once that is done, we'll go out and look at it. But, yeah, keep going, there's a couple, there's the big boulders you wanted along
There you go, huh?
the area.
Marker.
And you'll see one where there it is there, it's like, they've got that kind of rain garden area that they propose, it looks great. They
Boy, it
got-
looks better than new.
Yeah, looks like, that area was filled with carnival equipment,
Yeah.
trucks.
Remember all that hydraulic oil?
All
in there?
kinds of, there was oil
Good job, guys,
drums.
saving the planet.
Look at how many
Where's the
salamanders
next
could be in there.
This is before.
So anyway, that's the
Is the
report for
Edgerton
you.
property where they're
In the back.
Yeah, they took it all out. They were forced to take it all out. Because, they were doing bad things, storing everything back there and just dumping it.
Looks
Down
fantastic.
the road.
Are they still selling the property? That's what they were trying
Yeah,
to do.
they sold the property, it's not a sale like you think.
They sold it to like
was
the nephew or
internal.
something, right?
They just, internally, they sold it from
They changed the name. Changed the name, you mean?
The
No.
father who was getting
No.
quite, I think he's in his, I wanna say in his
100.
nineties.
Because that's all it is you're just changing the name of whoever was originally there, originally owner.
Yeah,
I think it's
he
actually,
sold-
they just passed it to somebody else in the family, really.
Well, it's either
Yeah.
someone else in the family or the workers,
But they
that
just-
kind of thing,
yeah.
where they bought it, and it's the same company, and the same everything.
Oh, we're done.
We're almost done. Can you hang on for 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Barely.
All
All
right.
right, so that moves us along to general discussion now.
So minutes of September, oh, you want to do 9 Hattertown first?
Doesn't matter.
Why don't you do 9 Hattertown?
All right, so 9 Hattertown, 4 East, I got a letter, I've been in contact with Joel Green, the attorney.
Were you guys on, anybody here on the commission when we did that?
Representing them, and, what did I do? I gave you the email, did you make copies?
Yes, we all have it.
For whatever reason, I didn't make a copy.
Here, I have
of it, so-
copies, I have copies.
Oh, here it is. okay.
So this is up the property,
So,
where should we-
what's
where
happening
we
with this is, they didn't do the work. You required that the work be done, I don't know what the deadline was, but they long passed it. And because they didn't do the work, we were ready to issue, we were ready to levy the fine that was associated with the citation. We discovered that there was a conflict of interest, and Kathy, our enforcement officer,
Denise. Oh, Kathy.
Kathy
Kohut?
Kohut couldn't
Oh.
do it. She had a
Oh,
conflict
right.
because she lives next door. And so you voted that Elizabeth Edgerton could stand in for her. I contacted Joel. Joe said, you know what, coincidentally, I just finished resolving some of the estate issues, and we can do the work. And I'm willing to send you a letter saying that we'll commit to that. And so he sent me this email where he talks about, everybody has it, he talked about how they're looking to do the work, and so he's asking me to hold off on issuing the citation again. And so I said I'd bring it to you guys if you're okay with it. that you could grant a further extension, give them a new deadline, and say, as long as you guys get this work done by the new deadline, then we'll hold off on the citation. That was my suggestion.
So
Now,
he's
the only
asking-
thing is the timing's a little bit funky in that, you know, it's the end of the year. And he's indicating here that they, while you had suggested that work be started within a week or two, my clients are not certain that they can realistically obtain a contract for site monitor and for work to actually begin within that time period. They are understandably hesitant to make the commitment to the commission. Be assured, I am confident that they will start the work as quickly as is reasonably possible and will complete it with due diligence. We will also endeavor to complete and submit the required documentation on the expedited basis. And so he's indicating that they'll go in and do the work and mulch it with salt hay and stabilize it. I guess the question that comes up, a couple of things. Option one, issue the citation saying you blew it, you missed your window and whatever. That's a little bit on the punitive side though, so I don't know if I would recommend that. The other option is to say, okay, we're gonna extend your time limit to the end of November, and then we'll revisit it at that point and see where you are. And the third option is to say, well, looking at the weather, we prefer you don't do the work, but wait till the spring and do it then, and we're gonna give you a deadline of what, you know, May, the end of May or something.
We're asking for the end of November, so I'm of the opinion that we say December 1st.
Yeah.
Extension to December 1st?
Well, just, I mean, unless you want to do November 30th, but one of the two. Give them what they're asking for, so.
And that if the growth is not established, your expectation is that it will be fully stabilized with adequate mulch and maintained over the winter.
I believe
Mulch
so.
and or any other
Yep.
method. Okay?
Yep, thank you.
And that is it for this stuff. You've got minutes.
Okay, so we'll, moving on to the minutes of the September 26, 2018 meeting. I'll entertain a motion in regards to these minutes. Everybody received these, right?
Yep.
Someone want to
Motion to accept
approve
the
the
minutes?
minutes?
So I have a motion
Or,
to approve
Minutes?
by Commissioner Romano. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
who's the second, Clark?
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't think our Regulation Amendment Committee or our Public Outreach Committee is in attendance tonight, so we will table those until our next meeting. Any correspondence?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Meeting's adjourned.